Picture this. You have a multi-million-dollar robotaxi,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. Top of the line.
Exactly. It's equipped with the most advanced hypersensitive sensors ever mounted on a chassis, and it's driving down a road in Texas.
Okay, setting the scene.
Right. So up ahead, the road is completely submerged by a flash flood, and I mean a raging creek.
Not just a puddle.
No, not a puddle at all. And the car's lasers, they see the water, the cameras record the water, the radar bounces off the water.
So the whole sensor suite is working perfectly.
Yes. The vehicle processes all of this, slows down just a little bit, and then it just drives directly into the creek anyway.
It honestly sounds like a punchline to a joke, but it was an extremely expensive reality.
It really was.
And, the most fascinating part isn't that the car ended up underwater. It's the multi-layered algorithmic reasoning that actually convinced the software that this was the absolute smartest move to make.
Which is exactly what we are unpacking for you today.
From back in April 2026.
Right. The incident the automated vehicle industry now refers to as Waymo's Floodwater Fiasco.
Such a catchy name for a massive headache.
Totally. So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly where the limits of autonomous AI actually sit, especially when they collide with unpredictable, chaotic weather.
Right.
But more importantly, we're going to look at why this specific, highly embarrassing failure was actually like a mandatory stepping stone for the future of transportation.
It was this highly publicized recall that forced pretty much every single AV company to fundamentally reevaluate how their quote-unquote brains interpret the physical world.
So let's go straight to the incident that started it all. San Antonio, Texas, April 20, 2026.
Right.
We have an unoccupied Waymo robotaxi out on a routine route, and it encounters a flooded roadway. And again, this isn't just, a puddle splashing the hubcaps.
No, this is active, fast-moving water covering the asphalt. Salado Creek essentially took over the road.
Exactly. And the whole multi-day recovery operation was caught on camera, which just triggered this massive review.
And this is where the telemetry data gets incredibly revealing. Because the post-mortem logs show us exactly what the car was, what it was thinking, millisecond by millisecond.
And what was it thinking?
Well, the sensor suite, the LiDAR spinning on the roof, the peripheral cameras, the radar, it all worked flawlessly.
No hardware failure.
None at all. The perception layer was a complete success. The car was not blind in any way. It detected the untraversable water with crystal clarity.
I found that detail in your notes just absolutely staggering because, we naturally assume a self-driving car crashes because it just failed to see an obstacle, right?
Right, like a sensor gets blinded by sun glare or mud blocks a camera lens.
Exactly. But the car saw the river perfectly. So if the multi-billion-dollar sensory array is screaming, hey, there's a massive flood ahead, how does the processing unit decide to take a swim?
Well, the failure occurred entirely in the interpretation layer. To understand the mechanism here, you really have to separate seeing from understanding.
Okay, break that down for us.
So the perception software painted a highly accurate 3D model of the flood.
Right.
But the decision engine, the logic center that actually dictates whether to brake or turn or accelerate it, fundamentally misclassified what that 3D model meant in that specific context.
So it's like a human driver staring dead center at a massive flashing neon sign that says bridge out, right?
Right, acknowledging the sign is there.
Yeah, acknowledging it, but continuing to press the gas pedal anyway because their dashboard GPS insists they're making great time.
That is a perfect translation of the technical glitch, actually. The sensory input is simply overridden by a deeply flawed operational command.
Wow.
The vehicle recognized an anomaly, right? It even commanded a reduction in speed.
Right, you mentioned it slowed down a bit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it failed to trigger the threshold required for a complete hard stop.
Yeah.
And because this wasn't, a physical malfunction like a snapped brake line on one isolated car.
It was a software thing.
Right. It was a fundamental flaw in the core logic. So the severity of the problem compounded instantly.
Yeah, I was looking at the recall numbers in the deck, and the scale here is terrifying.
It really is.
Because, think about it. A human makes a bad judgment call, and it's one localized accident. An algorithm makes a bad judgment call, and the entire hive mind shares the exact same delusion.
Spot on.
Because of this single line of flawed reasoning, 3,800 robotaxis were recalled. and this impacted both the fifth and sixth generations of Waymo's automated driving systems.
Just 3,800 vehicles operating simultaneously with identical blind spots in their conceptual reasoning?
And the geographic footprint was massive. Waymo had to recall its active fleet across 6 major U.S. markets. We're talking Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Austin, San Antonio, and Atlanta.
Basically everywhere they were operating at scale.
Right. Every single car in those cities had the potential to drive into a flood if the weather turned sour.
And what is notable here from a regulatory standpoint is the immediate corporate response.
They didn't try to hide it.
No, Waymo initiated a voluntary disclosure to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the NHTSA. They surfaced this vulnerability themselves.
Which is huge.
It is. In the AV sector, establishing a precedent of proactive transparency with federal regulators is critical. They knew this was a systemic issue requiring immediate intervention, not just some anomaly to be swept under the rug.
So you have thousands of vehicles, essentially, weaponized by bad logic, deployed across 6 different states. We have to look at the specific code that failed.
Let's do it.
There is this deeply ironic quote in the sources that sums this up so well. It says, "A vehicle that could navigate complex urban intersections could not stop itself from entering a flooded creek."
It really puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
It's crazy. How does an AI smart enough to yield to a cyclist, like anticipate a human on a bike, get totally outsmarted by a puddle?
Well, we have to dig into how AI uses cost functions and confidence thresholds. Let's look at the step-by-step sequence in the engineering review.
Okay, take us through it.
Step 1, the sensor detects the water.
Check.
Step 2, the software misclassifies the severity of the hazard.
The interpretation failure.
Exactly. And step 3, the vehicle enters the hazard.
It's that second step, though, the misclassification, that I really want to dissect. The deck mentions the speed of the road actually factored into the car's terrible decision.
Yes, and this is the absolute core of the glitch. Waymo's logic engine detected the water, but it failed to classify flooded lanes as untraversable, specifically on higher speed roadways.
Wait, why does the speed of the road matter to the water?
Think about the mathematical logic of a highway or a fast arterial road. If a vehicle is traveling at, say, 55 miles per hour, the algorithmic cost of slamming on the brakes for a false positive.
Like a shadow or a plastic bag blowing across the road?
Exactly. The cost of slamming the brakes for a plastic bag is incredibly high. Yeah. It could cause a massive pileup behind the robotaxi.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see. So the system is naturally biased toward maintaining its speed unless it is absolutely mathematically certain that the obstacle requires an emergency stop.
Precisely. On higher speed roads, the confidence threshold required to trigger a full stop is artificially elevated to prevent what they call phantom braking.
Phantom braking, right, where the car just freaks out and stops for no reason.
Right. So when the car encountered Salado Creek, the floodwater didn't meet that elevated threshold in the logic matrix. The context of the road's speed limit basically corrupted the interpretation.
That is wild.
Yeah. The system categorized a raging creek as a condition requiring cautious, reduced speed driving, rather than an impenetrable barrier requiring a hard stop and a full reroute.
This completely upends how we need to think about AI safety, honestly. The fear is always that the machine will be blind.
Right, that it won't see the stop sign.
Yeah. We worry it won't see a pedestrian stepping off a curb in the fog. But the real hidden danger is the machine seeing the threat perfectly and just lacking the grounded wisdom to understand what it actually means.
You're describing the absolute frontier of the edge case dilemma right there.
The edge case dilemma.
Right. In machine learning, an edge case is a rare, unpredictable scenario that sits way outside the dense cluster of normal training data.
Like a flash flood in San Antonio.
Exactly. The AI can sense its environment perfectly, but interpreting the severity of dynamic, chaotic weather requires a level of contextual reasoning that algorithms really struggle to synthesize.
Which brings up a massive logistical nightmare. You have 3,800 cars with a fundamental misunderstanding of water physics out on the roads.
A ticking clock, essentially.
Right. You can't just tow thousands of vehicles into a mechanic's garage before the next rainstorm hits Atlanta or Austin. How do you surgically fix a brain that's inside a moving car?
You deploy an over-the-air software update, commonly referred to as an OTA fix.
OTA, right.
And the mechanics of this are just a marvel of modern automotive engineering. They deployed a comprehensive logic patch across the entire active fleet simultaneously using cellular networks.
I think we take that for granted because, our phones do it while we sleep.
Sure, we're used to app updates.
But upgrading the operating system of a smartphone is very different from beaming a new decision-making matrix into a 2-ton piece of machinery that drives at 60 miles per hour.
It's an entirely different stakes game, absolutely.
So let's walk through the before and after of this patch based on the deck, just to illustrate what that code injection actually accomplished out in the real world.
Okay, so before the OTA update, the vehicle approaches the flooded scenario, detects the water, but the high-speed road parameters override the severity.
Because of the phantom braking bias we talked about.
Exactly. So it proceeds at a reduced speed, fails to calculate a reroute, and ends up in Salado Creek.
Right, and after.
After the update, the vehicle approaches the exact same scenario. But this time, the new logic successfully classifies the flooded lane as untraversable, completely ignoring the road's underlying speed limit context.
So it overrides the speed bias?
Yes, it executes a full stop and instantly computes an automatic reroute via a safe, pre-calculated alternate path.
You essentially teach an entire fleet of vehicles a brand new survival skill overnight without ever turning a wrench.
Overnight evolution, yeah.
But the deck also points out that while the engineers were writing and compiling that permanent OTA fix, they didn't just cross their fingers and hope it wouldn't rain, right?
No, they couldn't risk it.
Yeah.
They implemented interim operational limits immediately.
What does that look like?
They actively restricted the fleet's exposure by dialing up weather-related constraints. So they manually flagged known flood-prone corridors on the digital maps.
Okay, so they essentially said, hey, just avoid these specific roads entirely if it's raining, just as a Band-Aid.
Exactly, a temporary Band-Aid. Because they recognized that patching a single logic error regarding a specific type of flood on a specific type of road isn't a comprehensive solution.
Because weather is chaotic.
Right. You might teach the algorithm not to drive into Salado Creek, but what about a freak hailstorm in Phoenix or, black ice in San Francisco?
The edge cases are infinite.
Exactly. So this incident catalyzed a crucial pivot for Waymo. They moved from a reactive strategy, patching bugs as they happen, to a proactive strategy focused on truly mastering extreme weather.
Yes, and the slide deck outlines how they are developing entirely new software layers dedicated solely to adverse weather decision-making. And the feature that really grabbed my attention was the integration of geofenced flash flood zones.
Oh, the engineering behind that is quite elegant.
It sounds like sci-fi. Tell us how that works.
Well, they are now piping real-time meteorological data, and Active Weather API feeds directly into the overarching navigation system.
So the map physically changes shape based on the clouds in the sky.
Precisely. If the National Weather Service issues a flash flood warning for a specific neighborhood during an intense downpour, the system dynamically draws an invisible digital fence around that high-risk area.
In real time.
In real time.
Yeah.
And the vehicles will unconditionally refuse to enter those zones.
They just won't go.
Right. If the meteorological data indicates the risk threshold is too high, access is restricted before the car even gets close enough to rely on its localized sensors.
It avoids the edge case entirely rather than trying to, bravely navigate through it.
Exactly. It just routes around the danger zone long before the LiDAR even sees water.
Which, if you think about the expansion goals of the entire AV sector, this kind of innovation is non-negotiable infrastructure.
It absolutely is.
Because, the operating environment in San Francisco is highly structured. The weather is relatively mild. But expanding into Austin or Atlanta means dealing with torrential, blinding rainstorms.
Real weather.
Yeah, real weather. You cannot operate a commercial fleet in Texas if your cars don't natively understand Texas weather.
And this realization is exactly why the source documents frame this as an industry-wide reckoning. Deploying autonomous vehicles at a commercial scale guarantees that your system will eventually encounter every single bizarre weather anomaly nature can throw at it.
You can't program for everything manually.
Right. You cannot hard-code a response for every individual snowflake or puddle. You must build dynamic systems that can handle the unexpected safely.
And the sources distill this down into what they call the 3 pillars of the future for autonomous vehicles.
Let's walk through them.
Pillar number 1 is weather readiness. The era of validating these vehicles exclusively in sunny 75-degree California weather is officially over.
Long gone.
Robust safety testing must systematically include extreme, rare weather scenarios like whiteout snow conditions, sleet, and obviously flash floods.
And pillar number 2 is regulatory transparency. We touched on this with the NHTSA voluntary disclosure earlier.
Right, the proactive reporting.
Exactly. As these fleets scale to tens of thousands of vehicles, system failures are a statistical inevitability. Regulators, municipalities, and the general public require absolute, timely transparency when an incident occurs.
You can't hide it.
No, hiding failures behind corporate black boxes will destroy the industry before it even really gets off the ground.
And that ties directly into pillar number 3, which is public trust. The deck uses a phrase that I really want to dissect here. It says, every incident is a data set.
Every incident is a data set.
Yeah. The argument is that the industry must learn collectively. When one car fails, the data is analyzed, the logic is corrected, and the entire global fleet is inoculated.
It is the ultimate advantage of a connected, automated fleet, honestly.
How so?
Think about human drivers. A human makes a mistake on a slick road, maybe they spin out, and only that individual human learns the lesson.
Related to survive.
Right, but when an AV makes a mistake, the entire network learns the lesson instantly.
Okay, but I have to hold their feet to the fire on this a little bit, though.
Fair enough.
Calling a crash a data set is a very clinical, sanitized way of describing a 2-ton vehicle driving into a river.
It is corporate speak, for sure.
Yeah. And if I'm walking my dog near a high-speed roadway during a storm, I don't want to be the data set that teaches the hive mind how to brake, you know?
Of course not.
Doesn't this framework inherently turn the public into unwitting crash test dummies for beta software?
That tension between rapid innovation and public safety, that is the central challenge of this decade for the AV industry.
Right. So how do they justify it?
Their counterargument is grounded in statistics. They argue that human drivers are already constantly beta testing the roads with wildly varying levels of competence, fatigue, distraction.
Texting while driving.
Exactly. Which results in thousands of localized tragedies every day that never actually improve the overall system.
That's a grim point, but it's true.
The AB sector argues that while an algorithm might make a novel, unexpected error, like the Salado Creek incident, the transparent safety culture and the OTA update mechanism guarantee that that specific mistake is never repeated by any car ever again.
So the trust relies entirely on the proof of improvement. Which brings us to the road ahead.
Right.
The core takeaway is that the Floodwater fiasco isn't a symbol of a doomed technology.
Not at all.
It is actually concrete evidence that the system of oversight, transparency, and rapid iteration is functioning exactly the way it's supposed to.
And we are seeing this play out pragmatically right now. Waymo is currently targeting a return to public rides in San Antonio.
Going right back to where it happened.
Yes. But they're only doing so after completing a rigorous end-to-end overhaul of their flood monitoring and safety protocols. They're proving accountability through action, not just through press releases.
The voluntary federal disclosures, the massive OTA overhauls, the dynamic geofencing, these are the tangible building blocks of public confidence.
And if we look at the longer trajectory of automated driving, the central insight from these documents is really profound.
What's the main takeaway for you?
That every single corrected failure makes the overall system exponentially more robust. The path to a perfectly safe, fully autonomous transportation network does not bypass moments like the San Antonio incident. It runs directly through them.
You have to face the storm to learn how to drive in it.
Precisely.
We started this deep dive talking about how we expect AI to be this flawless, perfectly rational calculator. But the reality is much closer to teaching a newly licensed teenager how to drive.
That's a great analogy.
Right. Like, they might have perfect 20/20 vision, and they might clearly see the water rushing across the road, but they haven't accumulated the years of grounded wisdom required to actually interpret the danger.
They have to experience friction to develop judgment?
Exactly. They need experience. And through the power of collective OTA learning, the moment one entity in the network learns that lesson, the entire global fleet instantly gains that wisdom.
It is an accelerated, forced evolution of driving behavior.
It's an incredible shift in how we interact with machines. And that leaves us with one final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today.
Lay it on us.
If every algorithmic failure, every bizarre edge case, and every unpredictable weather event ultimately gets absorbed, patched, and used to make the collective AV hive mind smarter,
Yeah.
will there eventually come a day when a human driver is actually considered the ultimate edge case on the road?
Oh, a fascinating reversal of roles.
Right. The human becomes the one unpredictable, erratic variable that the flawless algorithmic system simply cannot patch.
That's a wild thought.
Something to keep in mind the next time you're navigating a flooded intersection. And to everyone listening, keep questioning the systems, keep looking closer at the world around you, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.